All right, perfect, perfect. Y'all can still hear me, right? Just make sure this microphone is not bugging. All right,
Yes, we
cool,
can hear you.
cool. Perfect. Let me go ahead and is it Erman that I know? I want to make sure. I don't know if it's just the Erman that I know. Anyway, doesn't matter. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, because I noticed there was like two Ermans in the chat in the group chat.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the one you think.
Oh yeah, you're not the Erman.
Yeah, but I'm
You're
probably gonna call you privately real
not.
soon. Yeah,
Gotcha, gotcha.
all right.
Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Are you saying the Google page? Is that what you guys saying? Because I have like three monitors in front of me. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right one.
We seen the one that say cloud
Oh,
computing
cloud
service.
computing. Okay, perfect. Gotcha. Because I have the other monitor I have is a ChatGPT, and then I have another one for work, and then so I want to make sure I'm not sharing anything confidential. All right. All right, guys. So thank you guys for being here today. Like I was saying, today is the introduction for Linux. And later on, for the people that want to learn Ansible, it's going to be the same thing. All right, so I was actually expecting someone in particular here who apparently, I hope I sent okay, I did send the right link. I don't see Rex Ford here. Anyway, not a problem. Hey guys, we are we've started. Okay, perfect. All right, so like I was saying, today's introduction to pretty much everything Linux, and then later on we're gonna do Ansible. So last time when we talked, it was what almost 2 weeks ago. Uh, Briefly about what is Linux, why exactly do you need Linux, and stuff about work and which part of Linux specifically are we gonna learn? So I'm just gonna brush it up again real quick because, like I was saying earlier, it's called Introduction for a reason, and a lot of you guys, hopefully not too many, but it doesn't matter. A lot of you guys are completely new to even servers, right? So I'm going to pretend like all of you guys are just to make it fair for everyone. And also just a quick refresher also, you know. All right, so and of course please feel free to put your questions in the chat instead of the audio, meaning while I'm talking. And the reason why is because this is not I'm not reading like a script, right? So if you like cut me while I'm like in the flow state is gonna mess up my my thinking process. So yeah, if you have a question, please put in chat, and I was when the minute I see it, I would immediately stop and answer the question. Of course, that won't interrupt my flow state as much as someone just cutting me and stuff. All right, so let's get back to what is Linux once again, pretty fast. All right, like I was saying last time, Linux is just an operating system. Don't make it complicated. It really doesn't have to be. Um, a lot of you guys obviously are watching this or using a computer, right? Probably using Windows. Some of you guys are like me, using Mac. Is this no, this is not confidential. So using Mac, right? So I'm using a MacBook Pro. Um, the M1 chip thing, and here's the version of the Mac I'm using, however you pronounce this. I don't know why it's now showing me numbers instead of the actual version. But just like when you have Windows, you have Windows. If you guys remember back in the day, we had Windows Vista, Windows 95. Today we have Windows 11. My most favorite is Windows 10. Actually, it's Windows 8. It reminds me when I was when I had my first computer. So you notice that, and same thing with Mac OS here. You have you have different types of Mac OS, right? I think it's one called Monterey or whatever. And the point here is when you have Windows 11, is to make it better than Windows 10. We can argue about it, but that's kind of the point, right? And Mac OS is a little bit the same. It's one operating system, but with different versions, right? In my it would not my it looks they look different. They are apparently better than the previous one, and so on and so on. So Linux is kind of the same. But the thing with Linux is we have something we call flavors, right? So when you have Windows 11, Windows 10, and then Windows 11, and Linux is it's a little bit of the same, but it's kind of different. So we have what we call Linux flavors, right? Like I was saying, Linux flavors, Linux flavors or Linux distributions, all right? However you want to call it. So let me show you real quick here. I think this is a better image here. You guys can see well, right? Or do you? I want to make sure my screen is not too small. Anyway, if you have any issues, like I said, just let me know. Okay, so like I was saying, we have multiple what we call Linux distribution, or we also call it Linux flavors. So you have CentOS or CentOS, Debian, Fedora. The most known, is it the most known? Well, outside of work, I would say Ubuntu, right? One of the most famous Ubuntu, and so on. Like there's so many, like so many. See, like for example, this picture here. There's so many, and of course, when you study Linux. Obviously, you don't need to know all of these. Absolutely not. Some of the flavors or distribution are better for specific jobs than others. And by specific jobs, I mean, for example, people that do a lot of cybersecurity, they will use this Linux distribution called Arch. And I could be wrong, but there's another. Is it Mint? Something else like that. And then, other people that do X, Y, and Z. So different flavors, they have different, I guess, approach to different things. Some commands are different. For example, with Ubuntu, and then you have CentOS, there's some commands that you see that are different, Debian, and so on and so on. There are two ways to study Linux. You can study Linux as in studying Linux, meaning what is Linux and wanting to know everything about Linux and becoming a Linux expert, like I was saying last time. And there's the way where you just want to study Linux to get a job and to be good in the workforce. And obviously, we're here for money, meaning we're here to make sure that we are able to get a job and be consistent and be useful. So the way we're going to study Linux is with that mindset. We're not going to try to be Linux expert. And the reason why I say this, even though I am a Linux administrator, I when I go to work, I promise you, I, I might be doing maybe 10-20% of Linux stuff, right? And what I mean by that is when you look forward, right, financially speaking, and even career-wise, you want to be where the future is going. And the future is going into, it's not actually not future anymore, honestly. It's the present, but it's gonna be more and more of that in the future, a very close future. We're going into what we call automation, uh, containers. We talk about containers another time, and we're going to get into a lot of AI stuff, meaning that's how the world is going to, right? So when you study something, right, you kind of want to be in the path of what's going to be in demand, right? And I'm promising you, there's always a demand for everything. Meaning, right now, there's someone that's working only on physical servers. They don't touch the cloud, they don't do nothing, but they're making like 150, maybe even 200K. All right. So there's money in everything, all right? But of course, we want to be in demand. And in this case, you want to study Linux in that, I guess, approach. Um, honestly, you're not gonna gain much from trying to be a Linux expert. First of all, it's crazy long. There's way too many stuff. And again, we're studying here to go towards that automation slash AI mindset. So the only thing you need to know or study or pay attention to is it's in demand. So in the subject of Linux distribution, like I was saying last time, what's in demand here? It's Red Hat, right? And again, I'm brushing it up real quick because we haven't talked about this in almost 2 weeks. Red Hat is the company. Uh, Red Hat is the company that provide what we call RHEL, and RHEL stands for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So just like any other flavors or Linux distribution, right? Like Ubuntu, Debian, and all that, that's what RHEL is. Okay. Now Red Hat is the company, right? And if you guys remember last time I was telling you guys I had the chance to get a job with Red Hat, the company itself. Pretty boring, but anyway, we can talk about it later. But just so you know, Red Hat is a company. So the company is called Red Hat, and they have multiple products. And one of their products is they have their own Linux distribution or own Linux flavors. Okay. And this is what you need to pay attention to. Forget about the Ubuntu, that like you can do that on the side, right? And matter of fact, it's not like they're like so different. That's the thing with Linux, right? Compared to like I don't know, studying Mac OS and then studying Linux, and then studying Windows, right? Completely different things. But when it comes to Linux, they have you have multiple flavors. But really, if you know one flavor, and meaning you know Linux as a whole, and you just study Linux using one flavor, you'll be easily able to maneuver the other ones. Because like I said, the only difference with them is, maybe some commands might be different, the architecture might be slightly different, but it's the same, honestly. So, like I say, you want to pay attention to the Red Hat or Rail um, flavor. All right. And after we are done, which again, I'm not timing this, there's no script here. So it could be a month, it could be 2 months. I will greatly recommend to go and get the certification called Red Hat um why am I Red Hat System Administrator. Okay. Just to kind of show you here like the great, and I'm not gonna go too deep in this. Well, it is the introduction to Linux, so I can honestly if I want to. Uh what is it showing me? So we have the Red Hat System Admin certification. Okay, so it's gonna look like, something like this. So normally, and again, like I say, my approach is based on what's in demand in the workforce. So we're gonna be studying based on Red Hat. All right. And that's why I was saying after that, the best transition is Ansible. And like I was saying earlier, and to this not Ansible talk, so I'm not gonna stay on Ansible too much, but just a quick reminder, Ansible is another product of Red Hat, the company Red Hat, okay? Um, and again, I don't want to get into what Ansible is. You don't need to know that now. But whatever you do, this is your foundation, okay? This is your foundation. Some people go with how's it called? Some people go with the Linux, how do they even call that? There's another company, there you go. This is it right here. Linux found no, I always forget. Well, some people also go with CompTIA or CompTIA, whatever you pronounce that. Yeah, some people go with the Linux Foundation. These are other companies that issue Linux certifications. I do not recommend going that route simply because, like I said, the industry, it's so meaning if you get in the company, there's 99% chances that the Linux servers are going to be Red Hat. Not always. Like I said, there's plenty of Red Hat flavors, but actual companies in the real world with big money, most of them are gonna be Red Hat. And again, you can look all this up. And I was thinking about Kali. There you go. Kali Linux is another very famous Linux flavor for people that are into cybersecurity. Okay. So again, at the end of the day, automation or AI or whatever the future shows, it's the same thing in terms of you need to have that Linux foundation, okay? Because whatever you do from here, if you don't know how to navigate through a Linux server, you're done. All right, you're not gonna make it. You understand? You need that foundation. It doesn't matter what you do. That's why I don't train to be a Linux expert. I don't even consider myself a Linux expert. All right, because again, Linux is really just a foundation. From here, you can decide to be whatever you want. All right. So for the people that want to go into cybersecurity, you're probably going to hear a lot about Kali or whatever other stuff, but you're most likely going to do a lot of your practice not on Rail, for example, meaning Red Hat, Linux enterprise flavor. So just to kind of give you a heads up here. But like I was saying earlier, if you study one of them, especially the one that's mostly in demand in the industry, you can do everything else. They have really slightly different differences. And to kind of give you a little bit more of a background, why do we have these many Linux flavors? You can create your Linux flavor tomorrow, your Linux distribution tomorrow. And that's the beautiful thing about Linux. Linux is it's open source, all right? Meaning you have access to tweak and use the I guess the foundation or the code or the skeleton of the product and make it your own, all right? And this is how we have companies like Red Hat having their own um, Linux, I guess, flavors. All right. So tomorrow you guys can create Cameroon, Linux Cameroon, right? There you go, my man Rex. You guys can create Linux Cameroon, you guys can create Ghana, Linux Ghana, whatever you want. All right. So, and just make it official. And if you're interested with that, you can go ahead and look up how to do all that. But just so you know, that's one of the reasons why not people, that's one of the reasons why everyone, especially companies, are into Linux a lot because it's open source, so it's easier to manipulate and stuff. All right, so let me make sure I don't have
Sorry, and also to add to it, not only that
Mhm.
it's open source, it's
Yeah.
also security wise, it's out there. It's really safe to
Right.
use that
Yeah.
because we have the community helping and building and upgrading and updating it all the time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the reason why they are, and I could be wrong about this part here, correct me if I'm wrong, but also the reason why there's such a big community is due to the fact that it is open source, right? Which allows people to I guess tweak it, improve it even, right? Which is the good thing about open source programs, right? So for if there's anyone here that's like completely new into IT, right? And you're like, what does open source means, right? So you have to get used to this kind of these terms. You don't want to get to work and be completely clueless. There's just some foundational terms, all right? And then there's other stuff like when you get to work, you can literally say to your boss, I have no idea what this is. You won't be in trouble. All right. But there's some foundational terms that you need to know. All right. When we talk about storage, if you get to work and be like your supervisor, like storage, what is a storage? All right. Like, is it a storage like the storage where I go put my couches before I sell it or something? You need to know you need to know these terms, right? So open source, like I said, it just and you can look deeper into what open source means and stuff like that. But in general, it just allows people to tweak it, all right, to create their own version of it using the like for example, speaking of AI, um, if you guys remember when Deep is I think it's called DeepSeek when DeepSeek came out, one of the beautiful thing about this, at least that's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but it came out as open source. right? Which ChatGPT and the others are not. Which I believe, if I'm understanding this right, which is one of the reasons why ChatGPT make a lot of money from selling what we call API, um, which is just a nice way to say you can use our app, but we will charge you, like you can use our code or our skeleton, but we will charge you per, I guess, the request of it, something like that, right? So DeepSeek, they made this stuff open source. Hopefully, I heard that right, meaning people can use whatever they build and build their own stuff from it, right? So that's why companies like this, very, very popular with, the public, and companies like this usually have the community is usually very strong because one thing about IT people, right? If you even watch this like cybersecurity movies, we're very community driven, all right? Because a lot of us are really nerds. You know what I mean? And when a nerd meet another nerd, they become friend. But anyway, uh, so I hope you guys understand because this background, even though it was long, I promise you it was needed. Because you don't want to get into terminals, Linux, and you do all this stuff, you don't even know why you're doing it. All right. So this is important to know. Is there any other questions before we jump into the next phase here? All right, I'll take it as a no. And again, you can always put in the chat. All right. So now, and again, I'm sorry if you are a Linux expert already, but like I kept saying, today's introduction to Linux, and I'm going all the way back, meaning considering because I know a couple of people in the chat that are not computer. I don't want to say computer, but like not Linux savvy at all, meaning they're not familiar with a server and all that stuff. All right. Mm. So when you use a computer, because you have to understand what is a computer really, a machine by definition, at least that's my understanding. That's been my understanding. Your fridge, unless you have a fridge from 1960, I don't know if if they had fridges back then, but your fridge, if you have a modern fridge, it's a computer. All right. Your car, besides the mechanical part of it, meaning the wheels that are turning forward, backwards, left and right, and all the stuff that you can make turn without your battery and stuff like that. Your car has a computer in it, and really modern cars are really just computers. Um, your phone is a computer. Some phones are even much more uh powerful. Uh, yeah, I guess you can say than some computers nowadays, and especially if you use like the Samsung and stuff like that is really, really powerful stuff. You can pretty much do everything. I remember the other day I had a check from uh, an old job that I realized I never checked. Then I realized it was expired. With my phone, I was able to scan it, right, to send it to the bank. Then I realized it was, just to say computers are really just machines. And the reason why I'm saying this is you need to approach computers in a different way when you are an engineer, especially when you work, in the Linux mindset, especially if you're coming from well, if you're coming from the Windows side, you understand this, but they don't communicate the way we communicate. And to be more detailed, which I'm not gonna stay there too much because that's not the point of today. Communicate with what we call, binaries, ones and zeros and stuff like that. And basically, when we approach a computer, right, to make it easier for the general public and also to sell computer products, you know, we have these things. You see my cursor, right? You do a bunch of clicking, right? Go back, forward, and all that stuff. You can create a file, delete a file, you can go this way, that way. So it makes it easy, right? You have the usual your visual stuff, which here, this for example, it's called a GUI, right? If you guys know GUI, right? graphic user interface. Basically, there are ways for you to communicate with it that makes it easier for the regular people, right? So my grandma can just come here and click and open and stuff like that. But when you are an engineer, especially when you work with Linux, right? You don't want to get just, you don't want to be like this. You're not a regular person. You know how to communicate with computers in a most, well, not necessarily the most, because the most direct way is ones and zeros, but in the most technical way possible. And the way you do that is by using what we call terminals. All right. So every single computer, you guys all have terminals, all right? So as I'm talking to you right now, can you guys go, if you're using a Windows, go to your search bar and just type terminals, all right? If you're using a Mac, your search bar should be up here, all right? You type terminal and then press enter, all right? Are you guys all there? Let me know if you guys are there. This is important. It's very important. Um, Matter of fact. Are you guys all have your terminal open?
I have my open. Yeah.
Perfect. Everybody else got the terminal open? I guess we're gonna get into some serious stuff here. You're gonna be lost. If you guys, anyone that has their terminal open, can you guys just put a like a thumbs up or something?
I have my open.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm gonna assume we all have our terminals open then. Again, some of you guys have been, this is like basic stuff. Some of you guys are network engineers. Like, come on, man. That's why I was warning, yeah, earlier. I was like, it's gonna be pretty boring, because I'm going this introduction. All right. Okay. So, so if you have your terminal open, and for those who, I don't know if maybe I did something confusing here. You're probably like, wait a minute. You say terminal, you open your terminal, and then you did some weird stuff here, and then you open this thing called iTerm. And when I was learning about Ansible, this was the confusing thing some people had. I myself too. A terminal is just a terminal. Okay. You can decide your whole life to only use the actual terminal provided by your computer, or you can use terminal products or companies that provide terminal services, right? So if I go and do uh, terminals, I should probably put computer terminal. It's gonna show me airport and stuff like that. Um, okay, terminal computer maybe. Okay. So computer terminal is a text-based interface where it's a hardware or software that allows users to enter commands and receive output from a computer. Da, 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 da. And you can dive into it and whatever. So you can download a terminal product. Like for example, I like to use this and it's only available with Mac OS. I like to use this thing called iTerm. Um, there's other products, like for example, something I'm gonna really, really make sure you guys get used to, and I know some of you are definitely used to it already, called Virtual Studio. This right here is actually the VPN that I use to work with Red Hat, but that's another talk. Uh, where's my Virtual Studio here? Don't tell me. Oh, I have it open here anyway. Anyway, so this is Virtual Studio. Again, there are multiple companies online. There's so many other companies, okay? But Virtual Studio, this thing right here, is just the most popular when it comes to any engineers, really, right? So it has multiple, um, I guess, features, right? You can use the terminal feature. If you do coding, um, you can have the output, debug, whatever. but actually, I think you can even use this right here. Anyway, and then there's so many other stuff here. Like Virtual Studio is huge. You don't want to study Virtual Studio, right? But my whole point is, as engineers, especially when you work in the world of Linux, you want to get familiar with terminals because again, there's communicating with computers with a bunch of clicking and all that stuff. That's for grandmas, okay? That's for grandmas. That's for regular people that go to Walmart, and when they look up in the ceiling, they see something that blinks. They think it's Christmas stuff. But when we are professional engineers, we know what that is. If we see a box on the ceiling of Walmart and it's blinking, we know that's a server. All right. If there's an issue, we know what to do, right? Because it's probably a Linux server. All right. And when you access a machine, a computer, a server, you can use whatever word you want. At the end of the day, they're all machines. All right. Uh, it's gonna be a terminal view, right? Matter of fact, if you guys have Google TVs, uh, if you really dig deep, you will see they have some Linux. It's actually Linux stuff in the back. So a lot of the stuff that you see, even your phone, if I'm not mistaken, either it's Androids or iPhones or both actually, Linux is the base. Okay, so any foundation when it comes to engineering, as far as navigating machines, you're most likely going to see a Linux machine. So that's why it's so important to know how to navigate a Linux machine. That's why I always keep saying there's a difference when you study to become a Linux expert and just be good at Linux because not everyone no everyone is planning on becoming a Linux expert. And honestly, financially, you probably shouldn't, honestly, especially with this AI stuff, right? So that's why I keep saying after this, you can do whatever you want. You can be a cybersecurity, you can be a DevOps, you can be an AI professional, whatever. But as long as you're going to be working with servers and you're going to have to get inside a server, go to a specific file, delete files, fill out file, whatever you need. Obviously, Linux skills. All right. All right. And like I keep saying, terminals. It doesn't matter. I can use the terminal here from this app. I can use the terminal here provided by my computer, or I can use this other app that I like. And the reason why I like it is it just look cool. And when people have MacBook Pros, they want to act like they're cool. So I like to act like I'm cool. You know, and this is cool. This is cool, man. It's expensive and it's cool. So good stuff. So, all right. So, and I'm gonna explain why I even used the word clear there. All right, so now that we understand that, how do we communicate with a Linux server? Now you're probably wondering, like, how am I even typing commands? Am I logged into a Linux server? I'm not logged into a Linux server. Like I was saying earlier, computers are just machines, right? You can literally do everything on your computer. I mean, creating a file, deleting a file, uh, I don't know, maybe even sending emails. I don't know if you can do that on the terminal of a Mac or Windows, but you can do pretty much everything on a terminal. Because again, this is probably how, not probably, this is how you can even destroy a computer, all right, compared to a bunch of clicks, all right? So here, this is the terminal of what? Of this computer that I'm using. If you guys did open your terminals earlier when I said to, right? This is the terminal provided by my computer, right? If you press enter, you notice this, right? And then clear like the word clear and clear. Okay? And also just to give a little pause here, the good thing with Linux when it comes to commands is very humanly understandable. Like it's not um OX exec space or I mean it does have some stuff that are not like English words, but mainly it makes sense. All right. Clear. I mean, do I really have to explain what clear means? Right? It would clear your screen, right? Um, and then you have other commands like top. I mean, obviously just saying top, it doesn't really say what it does, right? But just to say that some commands are very easy to remember and you do not, and that's why I keep mentioning the Linux expert thing, you do not need to know every Linux commands, all right? Because most likely you're not gonna be, or at least if you want to be a Linux admin, go ahead, all right? But if we're looking for like as far as in demand, and matter of fact, let me even pause here and say this because a lot of people think Um, I don't want, go too deep into IT. I just want my nice little 90K, 110. So I'm just gonna be a Linux admin. Thinking all you're gonna do it every day is clear. You're gonna just type clear all day at work. Like I was saying earlier, at work, my title, meaning if I were to show my W2 or my W4, it says Linux admin, but I don't do no, I mean, I do some Linux admin stuff like space stuff, uh, pff, yeah, some Linux team stuff, but mostly it's really automation, which is Ansible, right? So my point here is in order for you to even be a Linux admin, you need to know the cloud. You need to know automation. Most likely that automation tool will be Ansible. You need to know something that every single engineer need to know is GitHub. And we'll talk about GitHub another day. You need to know so you have automation, you have the cloud, and obviously Linux. Um, and if you're in a big company, right, at some point, if you want to level up, you need to know what we call containers, right? Um, so don't think it's just like it's not just this. It's not just clear to. Don't think Linux admins are easy jobs or whatever, right? Because the Linux expert, they have it harder, man. And even especially for people that are trying to be network administrators, you need to know Linux, all right? All this is important. All right. So, like I was saying, this is the terminal to my computer. All right. So I can send commands, I can type top. Oops. I can type top here. There you go. I have this here. Again, this is not a server. I'm not logged into a server. So if you type top on your computer, can you guys try just type top for those who never tried the command top and let me know if you're seeing this on your terminal. I'm gonna take the silence as a yes. Now, anyone knows how to get out of it? Well, I'm gonna take the silence as a no.
I,
If you, huh? Go ahead.
I think Control C can help or Control C.
Yep. Control C will help. Yep, it will help. The other, and like you said, Control C is one of those commands where you like it's not really a command. I mean, it's a thing on your keyboard, right? You press Control and then C. It cancels everything you're doing. Like for example, if I'm doing a command and then it's going slow and I want to stop it, or maybe if I made a mistake, I'm like, oh no 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 no, just press Control C. So remember that. But in this case, for example, another way to get out of and again, it's I know I've jumped way too deep into top commands yeah, but I just wanted to make you understand, the thing about terminals, right? So, but another way to get out of top is really also Q, the letter Q, just like that. And we'll see all that later, okay? So, once again, a terminal is just a way for you to directly communicate with a machine. And for those who are completely not familiar with Linux, you see all this clicking we're doing, right? You can actually also do it with Linux systems, right? And people like to do it with Ubuntu, okay? Meaning there is a way, um, let me see. Oh, there you go. Desktop. I just want to there you go. So if you type Ubuntu desktop, you will see how it looks like. Really pretty. You see? So just like your Mac or your Windows, it also has this view, okay? Like you can have you see, you have the Amazon app here, all right? You can have your Google Chrome, Firefox. You see? Double click. See how it looks? Because I'm sure, for those who are completely new to Linux, you probably thought Linux was all about servers and stuff like that. So you can also have this view, okay? And the reason why I'm showing you guys this, I really want, because a lot of people, especially when it comes to Linux, they're very scared of the terminal, right? It looks like those movies where you, like the Matrix with a bunch of numbers, and people are just typing and doing it. No, don't get scared. It's every computer has terminals, all right? And if you really fall in love with Linux, you don't have to use a terminal. Ubuntu provides you with this beautiful looking stuff. Okay, just like your Mac or you see, just like your Mac or your Windows. So that was just a FYI. All right. But in our case, we need to get familiar with um, terminals. Okay. So, and before we get into uh, and this is probably networking, so it's probably because I wanted to dive deep into what a server is, but I'm gonna do that when we get into networking, maybe next session. But now you understand what Linux is, what Red Hat is, terminal. So now let's get into what do you really need to know when it comes to getting introduced to Linux for the first time. So one thing you need to know when you get into any server, you need to know how to navigate the server, right? Well, not necessarily servers. Let me stick to the word machines, all right? Or computers, because servers are just computers. Um, you need to know how to navigate, meaning how do you create a folder? How do you go left, right, and all that stuff. All right. So if you're still in your terminal, I really hope you are in your terminal. I'm gonna introduce you to some very basic commands, all right? And if it makes you feel more comfortable to maybe take notes or whatever, which I don't really recommend. But again, because I'm not a school person, I don't like the way school teaches. I feel like it's more of robots will be behaving when, you know, life is uh how is it called? Practical stuff, right? So the best way to learn Linux is by doing it. All right, I don't have a notebook here from 5 years ago with a bunch of commands. I'm like, oh man, how do you do this again? Like I'd rather you use AI. I'd rather you go and ask ChatGPT, okay, than have a bunch of paperwork in front of you with a list of commands and all that stuff. All right. Maybe at first, maybe in the beginning, all right. Because, you know, I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes when I study stuff and I write it down, it kind of stick it to my mind. You can do that right at first, but all I'm saying is if you want to learn Linux command is by doing it. All right. So, and honestly, like I said, I'd rather you look it up on Google. How do you, you know, you can look up something stupid like, how do you edit a file? All right. How to edit a file in Linux. Rel. Right? I'd rather you do this than just be a copy warrior, okay? Because this is not school, this is actual stuff, all right? I'd rather you do this. Honestly, you probably even need to do this more often than take notes because you would use AI, of course, ChatGPT a lot when it comes to um, Googling stuff. Because with ChatGPT or AI in general, it's just much more faster. And also some models like ChatGPT, it gives you like detailed explanation of why you even. And now, as you can see, we have AI searches actually within Google. So all that talk actually you can even do it here. All right. So that was just a friendly reminder there. So when it comes to navigation, the first thing you need to know when it comes to navigation is where you are, right? So we have this beautiful command here called PWD. So PWD. All right. So I want you to type PWD on your terminal, please, on your computer. Okay. And then press enter. It will show you what we call a path. And there's a reason why I started with this command PWD because I wanted to talk about this right here. Very important. And the reason I didn't even think this was hard to understand until I think it was 2023. Yeah, because my daughter wasn't born yet. Yeah, 2023. I was teaching this guy, this Cameroonian brother about Linux. And believe it or not, he was actually paying me. You know, which even put more pressure on me to make sure he really gets it. Um, and I remember for a whole almost 2 hours. I had to teach him about what this thing means, path. He didn't understand it. I was like, man, so regular people, right? I call them Walmart people. But when I say Walmart people, it's not an insult really. It's just to say, like I said, when it's on Sunday at 2 a.m. and my mom opens up her Bank of America app and it says it's not allowing her to log in. It says maintenance. Her understanding of that is not my understanding. She's a Walmart person. She's a regular person. I understand it because I'm an engineer. I'm not a regular person. I know what's happening, right? They're doing because I do it as well at work with the IRS. For those who don't know, I work with the IRS. So some Sundays, if you go on the IRS website, it will say maintenance. Because I put that maintenance space there. Literally, right? One of the first step before we do a bunch of stuff, but right before patching Linux servers, which is where a bunch of IRS stuff are running, we put up a maintenance page just like every other company, right? So I understand this, all right? But apparently, Walmart people, like I like to call them, don't understand what's going on. They just think, and then my mom, she closed the app and reopened the app, closed the app, reopen. I'm like, what do you think closing reopen is gonna do? They're doing maintenance. You're a Walmart person. You don't understand this. Anyway, so understanding what a path is very important. And again, a lot of you are going to find this very boring, right? Because some of you are probably doing a bunch of DevOps, big word stuff. But for those who don't, I'm going to be very quick here. So just like, actually, this would have been a much better. Would have been better if I had a Windows right now because that's one thing I like about Windows. They have this path thing where you can kind of see the path here when you open files. But unfortunately, Mac OS don't have that. They don't have that stuff. So a path basically means you going into a folder, and then there's a folder inside that folder. You go into that folder. There's a folder within the folder inside that folder. You go into that folder. And then when you type PWD, it shows you where you are and it shows you the full path, right? I mean, just a path in general, right? When you say, take the path to, I don't know, or it's a route, right? To go to X, Y, and Z streets, right? So right now I'm in San Antonio, right? Yeah, how to get it to a location, exactly. So right now I'm in San Antonio. But if I really have to do PWD, if I was a machine right now, or well, it's not the machine that's there. The machine is just a machine. It's really the user that's in the location. So if I was a machine and there was a user, right, getting my brain, if the person type PWD to find out where he or she is, or if I'm the user, whatever. So I'm technically in on Earth. If you want to go even further back, I in what's the galaxy name? Magellan, whatever, well, the Milky Way. So I'm in the Milky Way on Earth in continent of America, North America to be specific. See, that's my path. And then I am in Texas, San Antonio, and we can go even deeper into uh which part of San Antonio I am, maybe north side. We can say the street, and then we can go even deeper into the path to really, really locate me. We can say house this color, we can say upstairs, we can say this room. We can that's a path, right? You want to locate where you are. All right. So PWD, very, very useful command. All right. So if you're going to take notes, take this down, all right? PWD is how to locate yourself when you are inside a machine, all right? And notice how I didn't use the word server because we are not inside a server right now, okay? And I wanted to have the server talk during networking, but I can have quickly here for those who are completely new to servers in general. A server is just a computer. Nothing more to it. I mean, there's more to it, but it's a computer. Like I said earlier, your fridge is a computer, your phone is a computer, your car, especially if you have one of those very ugly Tesla, is a computer as well. It's just my preference. I don't like modern stuff. I like old school stuff. It's a computer, all right? And terminals are just ways to talk directly to computers. The only thing with server is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's why you have the word. If you hear server, what word do you hear there? You hear the word serve, right? A server is really it's a little bit more to it, but just a quick thing. It's a machine that serves, specifically serves other machines, right? And you have the capability of accessing that server so you can do work, right? So when I type google.com, what's really happening is my computer is requesting something from a server somewhere in the world, right? With whatever IP it is, but with a domain name or server name, host name called google.com. Okay. And the more you get into networking, especially when it comes to the cloud, you understand what we call load balancing. You understand what we call uh, auto scaling, elastic. You understand because, you're probably wondering. So you're telling me there's one server in the world and billions of people, because you have to understand it's not people accessing google.com, it's computers. You understand what I mean? So your computer is talking to that server. It's not, you're not accessing that. It's you're accessing it through your computer. So if you have 20 computers and all of the computers are in going to google.com, all those machines are accessing. So if you're thinking, so you tell me there's one server in the world and probably dozens of billions of computers are all accessing that same server at the same time. It's not crashing. No, it's much more complicated than that. And that's why I say when you get into the cloud and you hear about auto scaling, load balancers, all that, networking stuff, you get it. Okay. But just to backtrack, again, a server is really just a machine or a computer that serves other machines. All right. You have a web server that does what? It does website or web server or web services. Okay. When you have a database machine, I mean, if I ask you what does a database machine does, I mean it's obvious, right? It serves data, right? It stores, serves, maintain whatever you want to do, you want to talk about, but it's the service is data. All right. That's why you need to install what we call database in the case of database servers, packages or softwares. All right. The same thing for web server, right? You will install something that provides you with the ability of serving web-based services to other computers, right? And when we're going to talk about Apache, we'll talk about HTTPD, we're going to talk about Nginx. Don't worry about that, okay? But I need you to understand why exactly are we not working on a server at the moment, right? Because again, it's just a computer, all right? What you need to get familiar with from the base is a terminal. We'll get to servers, don't worry. Probably today or probably not. It doesn't matter. You're still learning Linux here. You're not learning Mac OS. Okay? So, like I was saying, you need to know this thing called location. If you don't understand this thing we call path, that's it. Stop everything. Go become a nurse. Get into plumbing. I heard that AI would never touch plumbing and electricity. So you can get into that. If you don't have the time to get into those, you need to know what a path is, because if you don't know that, you're lost. Because everything in Linux is literally a path, literally, or I should say within a path. Like even the optimal path or folder or file, but it's more really a folder, which we call root, is within a path, even though it's just one slash. So that makes me introduce root to you guys. So in Linux, and because we don't have that much time, not just today, but in general, as an engineer, every time you get, some sort of training, you need to understand that this is just introducing you or making you familiar with a subject. And then if like I used to say, if you're not able to sit down and watch a 2 to 3 hours or even 5 hours video on a Saturday evening, you're not meant for this. You understand? You're not meant for this because when you hear the word engineer, you hear the word ingenuity, right? So someone that thinks beyond the physical, beyond the regular people. That's why I call them Walmart people. You understand? So when I see some, like I always say, when I go to Walmart and I see that box, if you pay attention in Walmart, next time you go to Walmart, look into the ceiling. Don't look too suspicious though, especially if you're dark skinned like me with a beard. If you look suspicious in places like that, it's gonna be weird. But look into the ceiling, but don't act too suspicious like you're trying to break the place. Look into the ceiling, you will notice boxes. And sometimes they have them open, I don't know why. And you'll notice blinking stuff. And and those are basically servers. Okay? I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys here are familiar with servers. All right. I mean, it's not going to be a big racket of servers like this. But my whole point is when you're an engineer, you need to go beyond what regular people do. So every time I teach something or you learn something, even from YouTube, don't just stick there and be like, whew. Or maybe say, well, you didn't teach me that, or you didn't go deep enough into the details. So I don't know. As an engineer, every time I say a word or something, even if I go deep into the details, you should want to go and find more about it. Obviously, don't waste your time on stuff that are not useful for you to get to be really strong at your work. But you know what I mean? So if I say web server and I kind of tell you what a web server is, you should still want to go on YouTube like, man, what is a web server? Trying to understand. He said the word host name. He said it's the name of a server, but what does that even mean? And see, nowadays we have ChatGPT. Okay, so I really want you to have that mindset, all right, of always digging. Okay, it's really important. But to get back into the terminal part, like I was saying, everything in Linux is a path or a file or a folder. When I say everything, and this part is might be a little bit confusing what I'm about to say, but even the commands are files. You don't need to understand what that means yet if you don't understand. But remember what I just said. Even commands in Linux are files. The reason why you don't need to understand it today, because today is just the introduction. And that right there is a little deep. Um, a dip in the sense of like just knowing about it, really. You're not gonna do anything. Well, depending if you're working with like Apache, especially like when we get to Docker stuff. Anyway, so everything is a command, everything is a file, sorry, and everything is in the path. For example, if I get to do this, you're like, wait a minute, cd slap, what does that mean? All right, clear. You remember what clear means, right? To clear my screen, boom, just like that. So if I have a bunch of like, a bunch of stuff going on, and I'm like, my screen is too dirty, just do clear. But if you like your screen crowded or whatever, you can spend your whole life, 120 years, right, of Linux work and never a single time clear your screen. It will be fine. It's up to you. So you've seen me do CD, all right, because we're still in the topic of navigation, all right? Because when you get into a car, we can talk about, oh, this is where you put the keys. I mean, unless you have a nice brand new car from 2020 and up, you probably push a button, right? I like keys. It's more old school stuff. This is where you push a button or keys. This is where you push your brakes. You open the hood. This is where all that extra stuff for those who care. Some people don't care. They just want to start a car and do their oil change when it's time. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if you don't know how to navigate, meaning like go left and right through the city, right, and stuff like that, you're not really a driver, right? So in our case, especially because Linux is all about path, right? You remember when I told you what a path is, right? How to locate something or locate yourself. Not, it could be something, but also yourself. That's why PWD is for yourself. Where am I in the server right now? This is what PWD does, all right? And I think it stands for Print Working Directory, all right? So let me prove to you. Print Working Directory. All right. Very soon I'm gonna start using ChatGPT here, honestly, because we're already there. We're already there. The way I use ChatGPT or I advise people to use ChatGPT is like an assistant. Okay. It's just that it gives way too much details, especially in situation. We're already in a session. We're not gonna read all that. But PWD stands for Print Working Directory. Okay. So just in case you were wondering. So it locates yourself, but you can also locate files inside the Linux thing. That's why we come back to the thing I kept talking about. What is a path, all right? So CD is another command. If you're a note, someone that take notes and stuff, you want to take note of this. If you're like me, and if you want to just take notes in terms of like your brain, but you're not gonna go back to it, you just use this over and over after we're done. So CD, which stands for changing or change directory, if I'm remembering right. Okay. And just to make sure we're clear, nobody's ever going to ask you what CD means, okay? Which is just because we are, getting into something here new. That's why I'm doing all this, but this is useless, honestly. You don't need like nobody's ever going to ask you that, all right? Only and that's why Linux is so cool because Linux is for the people like me who don't like the traditional way of school. Meaning I like if you're going to teach me how to drive, don't give me PDF files to read. Put me in the car and show me how to drive. That's how I like to study. You understand? If you're going to teach me how to build a house, we can talk about the theory and stuff like that. But until you let me or show me how to pour the concrete, and while you're telling me about it, I need to see the concrete being poured. Until that happens, I'm not learning. All right. That's what's cool with Linux is practice, practice, practice. So the reason I'm telling you what CD and PW means is really just so you understand that these are not random. We didn't just put CD out of nowhere. Like the creator of Linux, which by the way, if you're curious, is Linus Torvald, which is not, no, it's a Finnish, so from Finland, American software engineer. This is the guy who created Linux. Yep, this guy right here. He's the reason why we're here. And, he's still alive. I mean, it's not even old like that. So that shows you how not old Linux really is. All right. And you can get deep into that later. It's not important. But in case you guys were curious, this is the guy that created Linux. All right. So that's why when you see this CD, PW, these are not random stuff. All right. They actually mean stuff. That's why I meant to show you the actual meaning earlier, but it's not necessarily important. So CD, change directory, based on the name, you would guess what it means, right? It's what helps you to change directories, obviously, but change directories in terms of entering, so opening a folder. So again, if we're back into the Linux stuff, not the Linux stuff, but like the Walmart people, meaning regular people, when they, come to a regular a regular computer, they used to clicks, right? You used to do a bunch of clicks. So, for example, if I need to open this folder called Cubase, I'm gonna do it. Click on it, right? And then I'm gonna click on it, whatever folder is inside here. So if I were to ask you, what's my path? Where am I right now? If I were to do WPWD, right? Technically, I'm in Cubase. I'm more than just in Cubase, but we're going to talk about that. But I want to make it simple. I'm in Cubase and then I'm in audio, right? So how did I get to audio? I clicked on Cubase and then I clicked on audio to see whatever is inside. And as you can see, it's empty. This is what CD does. Okay. So let me do some else here. Uh, See, I don't like to just do conventional, letting you know what it is, but I also like to go step by step. So if I do CD, right? So again, remember PWD to see where I'm at. Okay, I am right here. And right here is what? This is what we call root. And when we get into the reason why I don't want to get too deep into the structure of Linux is because I want to do that when we talk about networking. Because when we talk about networking, we'll talk about stuff like the ET, VARs for Apache and stuff like that. But anyway, so LS stands for is really when you want to list. Okay, so meaning you want to see. So okay, PWD, I'm right here. But what's in where like what's in here, right? So I'm locating myself in this computer. See, I didn't use the word server. Could be a server, could be a regular computer. I am right here. But what is inside right here? Because again, being right here, what does that mean? It means I'm inside a folder. Because once again, everything in Linux is a file or a folder. So we have two types of stuff we work with Linux. We work with files and we work with folders, more called directories. Okay, so if you hear the word directory, hey, open this directory, create this directory. Directory just means folder. Okay, you can take that down in your notepad or whatever. All right, so you can use the word folder, never use the word directory in your life. It will be fine. It still means the same thing. All right. So when I do ls, is to list to see what's inside this folder, this directory where I'm in. Okay. Boom. Apparently, this folder here called forward slash, all right, which really is called root, but we'll talk about that in the next thing, has this. And the reason why I'm able to see the content of this folder is by using the command ls. Remember, listing, all right? So all of these right here. So you probably wonder how exactly do you know something is a folder and something is a file? All right. So remember what I say, CD, change directories. And again, directories mean folder really. So CD is how I can access a folder, right? So same way when I'm here in my MacBook and I see, for example, this is a folder called desktop, right? Because when you're on a regular server, you can easily tell if something is a folder and something is it's a file, right? Easy, because usually files they have the logo here. For example, up here, this is a .pdf file, and without even knowing the type of file it is, I can see the logo here. And if you're familiar with Acrobat, you know, this is, you know, I can come here, see the logo, so I can tell. And then here I see folders. Even on Windows, you have the folder, you know, regular folder, right, in real life, and that's how you know the difference. And folders, if I click here, it's going to open the content. So I just clicked. So I accessed this folder called desktop. Is the equivalent of using CD. I accessed desktop using CD. Now, on a regular computer, when you access a folder, it will automatically show you the content of that folder, right? But in Linux, to see the content of the folder that you just accessed, right? Remember, using CD folder directory, you use ls. Okay. So if I just CD, get familiar with the word CD, we won't say, hey, can you access? We can say that, it will still mean the same thing, but in Linux talk, we'll say CD. Can you CD into library? Hey, did you CD into that folder? Oh, you know, can you ls this? All right, get familiar with it. CD just means accessing a folder. A folder stands for, or it also means directory. So if I cd into etc, again, remember, I am inside this folder call, right? And I say ls to kind of see, oh, okay, so this is what this thing has. Okay, well, I want to cd into one of the folders here called etc, whatever this means. CD, press, boom, right here. Now, how do you know where you are? Honestly, you can look at the you can look at here to kind of know which folder you are. But in the beginning, if you're still new to Linux, keep using PWD. Okay, if you're going to use PWD 3 billion of times a day, it's okay. All right, if that helps you to really know where you are and be very familiar and stuff. PWD. Okay. All right. So this is my path. I'm inside this folder called etc. What is inside this folder? Because remember again, on a regular computer, I have to click and it shows me immediately what's inside the folder, right? If you have a Windows machine, you double click and it'll show you, all right? In this case, it doesn't do that. When you access a directory, remember, directories means folder, it just brings you in there, but it doesn't show you what's in there. So to see it, I use the command called ls. Wow, look at all these stuff inside this folder. All these folders inside this folder. Wrong. All of these are not folders. Or I should really use the term directory. How do I know? Well, I kind of know because I'm familiar with Linux and I've been doing it for a while, but let me not brag. But the way you know if it's a file or a folder, because look, they all look the same. How do you know? Right? It's not like your regular computer where you have the folder logo. You can tell. You use another command. There's other ways to know, but let's just act like we don't know. So you use the command called ll, okay? ll, right? It will do the same thing as ls, meaning list, show you the content of the folder that you're inside of. But here it will show you details about each like each of the content of that's in the file. So let me clear my screen. Okay. Remember, I'm still in the etc folder. And to confirm that, I can do pwd to locate myself. Like, okay, this is where I am. All right, cool, 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 cool. My GPS is working fine. So if I do L, okay, L like Larry, L, press enter. Ah, see, this is the problem using a regular computer instead of a server. Because when you have a non-Linux system, some Linux commands are not gonna work. I thought I could just do this whole thing on on a regular computer system. Let me try to see if my terminal is gonna. It's probably not gonna work either. Yeah, command not work. Command not found. Ah, this thing's gonna make me want to create start a whole new server. Let me do it here. Ah, it's not working. Let me go ahead and just boost up a computer server real quick because I really need you guys to know what this LL. At least I need you guys to see what it does. I can talk about it, but it's really important. Give me 1 second here. I will be really fast. I just need to push a computer server real quick to start. What was that page? What was that page? Uh, uh, uh. Let me do that. Uh, uh, uh. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen once again. I mean, you can tell me if you can see my screen. Where's that thing? Where's that thing? I'm getting tired of MacBooks. I don't know why they make things so complicated sometimes. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So please, guys, hopefully you guys all created your AWS account. Can you guys get into can you guys log into that? Because I didn't want to do this today because I kind of wanted to teach about what is AWS before I do this. But that LL command is really it's really important. So it looks like we're going to have to use a real computer, a real server. Hmm, what a bummer. What is going? Okay. So, are you guys all here? Let me know if you guys are all here. Okay. I'm gonna be as fast as possible because this on the next session I'm gonna talk about AWS. Just so you even know why you needed to create a server there. To create an account there. Okay. I'm assuming you guys are all there, right? Okay. I'm gonna take the silence as a yes. All right. So, if you guys are all there, welcome to what we call the cloud. I'm not gonna talk about what the cloud is today. You don't need to know that today. I'm just gonna show you how to create a and honestly, you don't even have to follow along with this because we're gonna have an actual talk about what the cloud is. I really just want to make sure I can show you all the Linux commands without being interrupted because unfortunately I wasn't using a obviously since this is not a server, listen, not a Linux server, it wasn't working. Not all the Linux commands were working, and as you can see, LL wasn't working. So just real quick, again, you don't have to follow along with this. I just need a server, so I'm gonna go really fast. Okay, I'm not gonna explain what I'm doing. Uh, Um, mm, this thing right here. Um, and I promise you, when we start talking about AWS, you understand what I'm doing right now. Which would be next week. Okay. Maybe the. Mm, mm, okay. Give me 1 second. Trying to be as fast as possible. Okay. Okay. Uh, I can't see my screen from down there. Okay, that's much better. All right, where the hell am I again? Okay, cool. Let me get into maybe down. Okay. Mm, test sudo. Oh, test. Okay, test sudo. Okay, I'm gonna have to do this from here then. Not a problem. Okay, security group, all traffic, yeah, anywhere. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Real quick, real quick. Okay, yeah. And once again, don't worry about it. I promise I'm gonna talk about what's going on next time. Cause I can't just talk about like jump straight into what is the cloud just like that, you know? I mean I know some of you guys know. So I'm really talking about the people that don't know. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, let me mode. Okay. I'm gonna tell you what Shmode and all that does very soon. Okay. So, and boom, just like that, I created a server. Or not created, server really existed if you know what the cloud means. But really, I deployed a server. And boom, just like that, I am in a Linux server. Oh, that's not the right command. All right. I am inside of a Linux server. And I would tell you, like, you'd probably like, cat. Why are you typing cat there? Is there a command called dog? Don't worry about it yet. Okay. Let's go step by step. All right. Just for the sake of time. We can't. Introduction is just what it's called, introduction. All right. But I just wanted to show you. This is a Linux server. Okay. Um, on the next talk, we'll I'll show you how to get. We'll finally get into AWS and what is EC2, all those steps I just did there, and how do we get to this server? Why does it even look so different than the when we want the terminal of our computer? Okay. Again, if you don't even know what LL means, this there's no point of talking about this today. All right. All right. So just know that right now I am inside a server, a real Linux server. All right. Is it a Red Hat, so Rail server? No, it's not. Um, it's an Amazon because another thing maybe I didn't say, Amazon themselves have their own Linux server. Fedora is also a great uh, Linux flavor, but it's really Amazon Linux. It's not a Red Hat. But anyway, that's another talk for another day. So PWD, because I'm lost. Oh, here I am. All right. LS to see what's inside the folder or the directory I am, right? Remember. Well, when if it's empty and you type ls, look again, I'm gonna type ls. Nothing. It means what? It means it's empty. That's all it means. Don't make it complicated. That's all it means. All right. So let me go into a folder that I know it's not empty because remember I wanted to teach you guys how do you know if it's a file or a folder. All right. So I'm gonna go. Remember that ET? Huh, you're probably like, wait a minute. So you have ET on your computer and you have ET on a server? Again, that's for another talk because we need to talk about the structure of Linux. And the reason why I didn't talk about it today, or I'm not going to talk about it today, is like if you don't even know how to list, if you don't even know the difference between a file and a directory, like how are we gonna talk about the structure of a whole system? All right, step by step. Okay, so we're gonna talk about what ET is here. Again, we talked about PWD, we talked about CD, how to access a directory, right? Also called folder. We talked about LS, and we're gonna talk about a command called LL. So again, let's do LS first. See what's inside here. Ooh, lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. You probably noticed something. I hope you did. But when I was using the terminal to go through my computer, which is what you guys were doing, right? Hopefully, it didn't have no colors. Does that matter? Not really. But kinda. Because again, we're not Walmart people here. We don't need colors to know. You really think when I come here on my computer, oh, I'm trying to open the iTerm thing, forgetting that's I'm using that right now. Let me just use a regular terminal. You really think when I come here and I do, well, L is not gonna work. LS. There's no colors. You really think this is confusing? Or this is I don't know, this is crazy. There's nothing like you really think I wouldn't know what's a file here just because of colors. Of course no. Again, we're not Walmart people here. All right? We are engineers. This is nothing. Just by the look and the experience of this, I can tell you what's a file, what's a folder, but not really, really always though. If you're seeing a a file or a folder that you've never seen before. The reason why I know, like for example, this is a file and stuff because I'm just familiar with it. Is but if you're not familiar with it, then you wouldn't know. So that's why I say earlier, like the colors are important, yes and no. All right. It's an indicator of not only what is a file and what is a folder, but also an indicator of what type of file you're looking at. All right. Okay, so it's good. It makes your work easy, especially if you're not familiar with the system you're looking at, right? Like for example, when I look at this, I can tell you, for example, this right here, PPP. I don't even know what that is. I can't tell you if it's a folder or not. Okay, and unless I check it with the LL command that I'm about to show. All right. So all this talking is to say, yes, the colors are cool, right? But as a professional, you use your commands and you use your experience. All right. All right. So I did ls to list the content of this etc folder. See a bunch of colors, really pretty, really good. All right. But that's not how we want to stick into, that's not how we want to learn about what is a file and what is a folder. Okay. So, and also just basic computer stuff. When you when you have a file, how do you know a how do you know if it's a picture and how do you know if it's a PDF? Usually you see dot something, right? That's how you know. See, this is we know it's a file, but now when it's not just a file, it's a PDF file. How do you know if it's a if it's a picture? You see PNG, sometimes you see a JPEG, right? See JPG. So we know it's a picture or image file, but not only that, which type of image file it is. All right. And you can look up what's the difference between PNG and all that. We're not in a videographer class or something. So that doesn't matter. All right. But in our case, we can also use the extension to not only know if it's a file, but what type of file it is, right? Like here, for example, if this was a file, that's a .conf file, and we you get familiar with what it is, what that means. But at the same time, though, this here is a file, but you don't see the extension, right? That's why it's also confusing. The only reason I know this is a file is because again, experience. I know fstab. If you've ever done anything with Linux, you know what fstab is. All right, and we're gonna talk about fstab. Don't worry. So let me stop talking. And ll, boom, just like that. Okay, let's take an example. How when you look at this, how do you know? Like these are the same again. This when we do ls, we saw all these files, right? But look how they're showing up now. I'm gonna make sure I don't scroll too fast because it might look like the Matrix. You know, in the Matrix, how the numbers go like this, you get all confused. All right, so I'm gonna make sure I don't do that. But I promise you, the more you do Linux stuff or terminal stuff, this is gonna be easy. Just be a regular screen to you. So when you look at this, does anybody know by any chance? And does anyone know? Because we never know. Maybe all of you guys know, and I'm just wasting my time talking. But it would be good for the YouTube though. Anybody knows like using LL when you look at these, for example, just to give you, look at this thing here and this thing here, right? Pay attention to these two. Do you see any difference besides the colors, of course? But like I
Yeah,
said,
I would say LL is long listing, while LS is a short listing.
right. So yeah, that's the definition or the understanding of the command, right? But what
Right.
I'm asking is now that we know what the command is, right? When you look at these two, I'm gonna just say files, but one of them is a directory. I'm just gonna use files for the sake of talking.
Right,
How do
right.
you know which one is a file and which one is a directory? Do you guys know by any chance?
Yeah, if you have a D, just like you have from the beginning, that's a directory, and you have a dash, that's just a file.
Oh, really? Where's that? I don't see D here.
Oh no, to the end of from the right directory D, right, that's a directory, that's a
You
folder.
mean here?
Right, right. That's what you mean. But then the
Okay.
colors also signifies, right? If it's blue, it's
Uh-huh.
a directory. If it's white, it's a file.
Oh, okay. And where's that? You said D and dash, right? Are you
Right.
where is it? Because I
Well,
see a
well,
bunch of
well, the dash from the beginning, right? You have that dash, and then you have the permission.
good, perfect. So it's the beginning, right?
Right,
Right
right.
here. Perfect. Yep, that's exactly that, right? So you have a dash here, and D here stands for directory. Maybe it doesn't even stands for directory, but just know that when you see D, it means it's a directory. And when you don't see D, right, and you see just a dash, it means it's a file. See, coming from a non-technical, from being a regular Walmart person to
Excuse
now,
me, I have a
yeah, go
question.
ahead. Mm-hmm.
When you have a L,
Yeah. Oh,
what is the meaning of that?
we're gonna talk about this another time, but this is a link. This is
Okay.
Right.
what we call a link. And I promise you, if I get into it right now, when we don't even know what L is, it's gonna be very confusing. But for now, don't worry about the L thing. I promise you, we're going to get there. It's actually
Okay.
m much more. It's not too down the line because linking, and for the people that kind of are familiar with Linux, linking is just a quick talk here. Is you can link a file to another file, and there are different types of link. Think of it like mirroring, meaning if it's a hard link, for example, if you delete the link, you would delete the original file. Hopefully, I'm not mix matching the definitions here. And if it's a soft, what we call it soft link, it's not as connected, but it's a link. And a lot of times, we do that in Linux when it comes to something that we call binaries, right? Binaries and packages. And again, I don't want to confuse, right? But we're gonna get there. But just to answer your question straight, L here just means link, uh,
Okay.
meaning this thing here, this file here, is linked to this here, or maybe it's the other way. Hopefully, I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah. But for today, we're just worrying about the basic, which is a file and a folder. All right. And of course, you guys know what a folder is, right? I mean, even at home or when you go to the office, I mean, a folder is like a folder, right? It's just a big thing where you put a bunch of files, right? When you go to an office or even at home in your I don't know, living room or even in your bedroom, if you have like your social security, your uh you know, birth certificate, your children's birth certificate and stuff like that, you have them safe somewhere, right? Most likely inside a folder, or maybe you have it under the bed. I don't know, but you have it saved somewhere, right? Which is what a folder is, right? It's a place where you put stuff in it, and that stuff can be other folders too. You can put a folder inside a folder, right? Or you can just have files. Now, files, again, just to get back to regular computers here. So, a files is different type. I mean, you guys use Windows, right? You guys have zip files, right? You guys open pictures after you go on vacation with the family, or if you go do Thanksgiving stuff, you guys have pictures, right? And you put on your computer, right? When you get to those pictures, it will either show GPG, JPJ, JPG, PNG, and all that, right? Uh, these are your files, right? If you have videos, it will show uh, MP4. Is it MP4? Yeah, I think so. I think MP4 is some videos. I could be wrong, but I know back in the day, MP3 were the thing when it comes to audios. Anyway, so that's how you know the different type of files you have, right? Same thing here on Linux. Again, You remember the only reason I even had to deploy or get inside a Linux machine is because that LL command didn't work, right? But I can really do all this talk using my computer. So so everything I'm doing here, right? If I was obviously, like I say, we didn't have to deploy a server like I did today. But if the LL didn't work, not everything, some commands will still work. For some reason, commands like LL, if you're not on the actual Linux Linux server, it's not going to work. But most of the Linux commands are going to work on your computer. For example, I almost showed my IP address. But there's a way you can, I can actually show you the IP address of this computer. But anyway, we'll do that when we talk about networking. So my point here is now that we know how to differentiate the directory, which again is also called a folder, and the file, we need to understand, just like regular computers, the different types of files, right? You have the text file, you have again, I did all that talk earlier, the picture files, videos files, audio file, MP3, dot wave, right? And usually it will be in the name of the file, right? So dot, for example, here it says dot conf, right? So now you're getting introduced to a new type of file. So you've seen MP3, MP4, you've seen, JPG on pictures and stuff. Now you see a new type of file called .conf, right? And just so you understand, conf just stands for configuration, all right? And when we get into, I'm not sure if it's going to be on the next session or not, but we're going to talk about, very, very configuration files when it comes to Linux, because we can't talk about configuration files if you don't even know how Linux is structured, okay? All right, so again, we learn about what a terminal is. We learn about what a server is. We say servers are really just computers that serves all the computers. That's why there's a server somewhere in the world called with the name google.com. But this is even a lie, because if you know networking, if you know the cloud, you know there's not a single server in the world. Meaning it's not just one giant server called where every server that's not how it works. It's a little bit more complex than that. But the understanding is that it's only because Google is so big and they have so many requests hitting their system. But really, if Google was a startup in someone's basement, it would just be one computer, one server called with the host name called google.com. Literally. If Google was not the Google you know today, it will only be one computer. So if you're wondering how is it that it's working then if it's not just one computer? So you tell me a bunch of computers have the same name. Um, yes and no. There's something called load balancer and a bunch of networking gibberish. But again, we can talk about that another time. But they have a way to do what we call auto scaling, where you would hit the same name online, so google.com, for example, but it won't go, it's not really the same server. It's not a single machine. It's multiple machines that get created depending on the demand, all right? So if it's only two people that are putting or pushing requests onto this server, all right, but then if it gets to 3 million people, then there's something called auto scaling. It's gonna deploy multiple servers, which is really also what we call a vertical scaling, which is the creation of multiple machines, but they're all attached or tagged onto the same host name or server name. And the way the traffic is balanced is using something we call load balancer. We'll talk about that. And I'm not even a network person guy, so I'm not gonna go too deep into that. All right. So again, we learn about PWD to locate yourself inside a server. We learn about LS to list the content of the folder that you're in, all right? And we said every single thing in Linux is a file. Okay. And the file obviously has to be inside a folder. A folder can also be inside a folder, right? And we use the command called ll to see if it's a file or a folder. We say that when you type ll, right, it will do the same thing ls does, all right? But if you notice the way it's listing the content, it's not the same, right? This is more like vertical, right? Way of showing, or like list type of way of showing. When ls was more like this, right? You have beautiful looking, it's more organized, or at least easier to read. But here you have a bunch of stuff. You have a bunch of stuff like whoa, whoa, whoa. And don't worry, we'll learn about what all these X, R, X, or all that stuff means. All right. The reason why I don't want to get into it today, not only because of time, but also because when we get to this, it can get very tricky. You understand? It can get very tricky because, right, if I tell you, if I tell you this means uh, 7 5 5, you won't really know what that means. All right. And if I tell you this here means 4 5 6 4 4, so 6 4 4, you won't really know what that means, right? So if I say all that, and then talking about this, then I have to introduce a command called chmod, or change mode, really. Let me clear my screen here because I hate when it looks all messy like this. Actually, you see how I'm taking my sweet time deleting this. This is really a shortcut on the keyboard to do that much faster. But anyway, we're lazy. Right. So if I start talking about what those RX stuff means, we're gonna look into something called chmod. All right. We're gonna look into permissions. All right. And also getting into the realm of AWS or the cloud. That means we're going to be talking about something called IAM, right? Which stands for Identity, Access, and Management. Hopefully that's right. Yeah, I think that's right. Identity, access. There you go. Identity and access management. Wow, it's the same thing, right? So it's very, very important to know the background of stuff before you dive into it. Okay. So, so far any questions about anything I said about Linux, terminal, anything? Was there anything that was like confusing and you're like, still, I know talked about it, it doesn't make sense to me. Feel free. No one is gonna see your face, so nobody's gonna make fun of you. Who will make fun of you anyway? I'm joking. No question. Either you guys lied to me and you guys are Linux guys already, or I'm just very good at teaching. Okay, because I had lots of questions. So you guys understood that path thing when I did the PWD and I show you the path? Because that's very important. Because if you don't understand path, you can't use a Linux server. You cannot. It's literally impossible. Okay. I'm gonna take the silence as either you guys are actually Linux guys who just didn't have anything to do on a Saturday morning, or I'm just very good at this. Okay, cool. All right. Um, there's one last thing, because we're approaching the end here. Because again, you need to remember that all this is not, none of this is scripted, okay? None of this is scripted. So, I always have to jog my memory to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Because obviously, when we say introduction, I mean, if you go on YouTube right now, type introduction to Linux, okay, you'll see 7 hours videos. You understand? So, and what I mean by this is, let me, what I mean by this is you're not gonna You're not gonna do this in one day. All right. So, meaning next time we see each other, it's still gonna be consider introduction because there's so many stuff that are basic. And when I say so many, and again, if you have to remember, we're still not studying as Linux expert here. So just imagine what a Linux expert needs to know. Useless stuff. Not useless in terms of they're not you don't like useless stuff in terms of you don't need to know that to get into the workforce and do your job. Maybe I shouldn't have said useless stuff. That was exaggerated. They're not useless. But if you're gonna be a cloud engineer, they I mean, it's cool to know, but it's not needed. If you're gonna be a cybersecurity, and that's why when you start with Linux, it's so cool because after this, you can do whatever you want. Okay, as long as I mean, not even as long as it doesn't matter what that whatever you want means. It's going to include automation. You can be as stubborn as you want. You must know automation. Doesn't matter who you are. The world is going to be automated. All right. Doesn't matter that I think AI is probably the worst thing uh, after a nuclear bomb. The worst thing that ever happened to us, and we're going to regret this AI stuff in the future. Big, big regret. But anyway, that's my personal opinion. Doesn't matter what it is, you need to have the foundation, and the foundation is being able to navigate through Linux machines. And when you get into those movies, you know those movies about hackers and all the technical stuff, and then you see on the screen that the guy type LS, you're like, oh, I know what that means. And I know this because I actually watched this movie not too long ago, and the guy was typing a bunch of commands. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know these commands, and it made me feel good because these were movies, the same movies I was watching when I was a kid. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, hey, I know what the guy's doing. At some point, I was even like, no, 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 you forgot a space there. You need to put dash. You know what I mean? So it's real cool, man. It makes you feel confident. All right. So you guys sure there's no question? Okay. Well, if there are no questions, today at I think it's 6 p.m., we're going to have the Ansible session.
Hey, Vanessa,
Yes, sir.
quick one. Are we getting any
Hold up.
homework like you said in your text message so that we can
Oh,
practice during the weekend?
right, right. I will go ahead and come up with something real quick and send it in the chat.
Thank you.
Um, the reason why it wasn't really in my mind is because this is I mean, we didn't do much technical stuff. We talked
Mm.
about maybe three, four, maybe commands,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's gonna be hard to really come up with something. But at the same time, I mean, at the end of the day, I
Send
want,
anything. If we
yeah,
need more assistance, I'll reach out.
exactly, yeah. If
All
you
right.
have any issues, because I
Hey,
want to trust. Yeah, sorry, I think I cut you. Oh, sorry, but I want to trust that you guys are uh good, responsible adults, which I know you guys are. And what I mean by that is like finishing this, not behaving like when we were kids in school where, oh, school is done. Let me get back home and watch TV. And it's like, no, this is real work, real life stuff. So like when we're done here, you need to be on your own terminal, reciting or redoing all the stuff that we did here. All right, all these ls command. You need to redo it. All right, and for those who are already familiar with AWS and know how to deploy a Linux server, you need to know how to, you need to be able to do that, okay, without me necessarily. But the projects, those are different. Those are not only to keep you guys on fire, but those are also stuff you can add in your personal portfolio and personal stuff too, meaning you can talk about what you've done and also to allow us to come back to the next session and talk about them. You see what I'm saying? But I'm not too sure how I can come up with a project about LS and CD. All right. But we'll see. But again, if not, we're still in the introduction phase, so no big deal. It's probably the people with Ansible that are gonna need and I need to come up with something. So if you guys want to come into Ansible and see, good. If not, you because if you know if you just learn about LL, you're gonna waste your time studying Ansible. There, I'm not stopping to do no LL and LS explanation. All right. Well, it is 12:03. It's officially 2 hours and 3 minutes. So I will go ahead and okay, cool. All right. If you want to show up to the
So,
6 p.m. thing,
so
good.
when you say 6 p.m. is
Yes.
Eastern or Central?
Central. Let me confirm
Okay.
that because we had an agreement in the chat there. Let me confirm that. Oh, it's actually 6:30, 6:30 p.m. Central. So it's gonna be 7:30 Eastern.
Eastern.
Yeah. And those are the time that, well, I don't want to say you guys, but the majority of you guys agreed to. I just went with it because I'm usually mostly free on the weekend. And in the worst case scenario, of course, I'll give you guys a heads up. Say, hey, I have something coming up. I can't do it. But yeah, so in as far as today, we are good. So 6:30 p.m. Central, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We will be doing Ansible introduction. So if you're coming thinking we're gonna be doing some hardcore stuff again, it's just introduction. So if you're already creating a whole infrastructure and you work for Tesla or you're Elon Musk's best friend, you're gonna be bored. I'm telling you that is introduction. All right. So I will see you guys later, or maybe see you guys next week. Thank you guys for showing up. I am gonna stop the recording.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
See you
sir.
later. Yeah.
A-
Thank you.
Absolutely, man.